Okay, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the information session on the Master of Research, the Macquarie Business School. I'm Associate Professor Vito Mollica, the Associate Dean of Higher Degree Research at the Macquarie Business School. Today we've got a couple of slides and a few presentations, videos for you to go through. There's also the chat for you to send questions. And we've got a team standing by ready to answer your questions. So hopefully you all can see my slides. And we're moving on to the second slide. The second slide includes our information on a higher GPA requirement to get into our units. And we also, the scholarships that we provide. So there's the 4,000 scholarship that is provided in the first year of the Masters by Research when you're conducting training or research training. And then in the second year, which is the year of research, where you write your thesis, that scholarship increases to $28,597,000. GPA, so if we look at actuarial studies and business analytics, they require a GPA of 6.13 out of 7. And accounting, corporate governance, economics, applied finance, management, and marketing require a GPA of 5.25 out of 7. So there are entry criteria at the business school. I see a couple of questions on the Q&A. So I think we can start to try and address a couple of those. What I've shared with you right now is essentially an outline of the units that you would conduct in your first year of study. Now, some of the questions I'm being asked are around, can I receive credit? I already have a master's degree. Yes, the answer is we can work out whether there's partial credit provided or full credit provided for you to be able to conduct the second year of your MRes, which then allows you to write your thesis. And if you score a sufficient grade and there is suitable supervision available, we can enter you into the PhD program and you can graduate after submitting your thesis and being awarded by 3 examiners your PhD. And I do apologise for the technical issues with the videos freezing. I'm not sure what happened there, but hopefully it's back on and it's okay now. Lise has asked, I've graduated from Macquarie with a Masters of Banking and Finance. Can some credits be taken from the previous degree? Yes, you can. What we need to work out, Lisa, is essentially whether you're going to be able to get into the second year directly. And that means, you may have done some research training elsewhere, or you may have actually done some of the research training as part of your banking and finance, because some of the banking and finance units do include research elements to it. Rosario asks, is it possible to do a joint degree between 2 departments? So it's not like you get a joint degree. If you're talking about you want to do, let's say, finance and management, what that would mean is you actually would have a supervisor from each of those 2 departments, but you essentially graduate with a Masters of Research. You don't graduate with a Masters of Research in finance and management. You graduate with a Masters in Research. If you want to do it in 2 departments, that's no problem. We have such cases. It's more typical in PhD, but with the MRes, there is this flexibility available as well. Okay, Sarah asks, is the PhD thesis an extension of the MRes thesis? So there's a couple of ways of thinking about how you can answer that question. Your second year of the MRes, where you conduct a thesis, I like to think of that as you conduct a pilot study. The requirements of an MRes thesis and a PhD thesis are very different. So some people like to take the opportunity to do in the MRes to test out a couple of ideas and see where that leads them to, so then they can continue on into their PhD. Whereas others might execute a particular task in their MRes, which might have nothing to do with the thesis that they eventually do in their PhD. The MRes is all about research training, but Sarah, if you wanted to extend your MRes into your PhD, absolutely, and that's something we would encourage you to do. Thomas asks, how do entry requirements for MRes and DPhil differ? Would I be better off going directly to the PhD from a Master of Applied Finance? Okay, Thomas, so your Master of Applied Finance, as we answered before, it really depends on what units you conducted in your Master of Applied Finance, which is a very big course in terms of the suite of units available. If you've taken a more research orientated, we possibly can put you into the second year of the MRes, where you conduct your thesis. But can you go straight from a Masters of Applied Finance into a PhD? It's unlikely unless you have perhaps some industry experience where you've done some research reports. What's critical at Macquarie University for you to enter into the PhD program is to demonstrate that you've undertaken a thesis or a piece of research independently. Esha writes, do we need to consult the respective departments before writing the research proposal? Good question, Esha. It's always good to know what supervisors or potential supervisors within departments are interested in. If you write up a proposal, but there is nobody interested in that idea, then it does make it difficult for somebody to find a second year supervisor. I do suggest you consult to get it, or at least look at the profiles of potential people you would want to possibly be your supervisor, but it is not a requirement. I just think it's very good to be a little bit proactive and see what the research topics of the staff are, so that way you can find a better fit for yourself. Ash writes, can we bring our own research topic for MRes, or do we join existing research programs and use their topic? So Ash, again, that's a horses for courses sort of question, in the sense of certain supervisors have general topics that they are interested in, or research questions that they are interested in, and you starting a conversation with them, you can find out what those are, and that may possibly lead to you undertaking an MRes. But most of the time, I would say most of the candidates come up with their own idea that they want to test, and that is of like interest to the supervisor. Pfizer's done, asks questions, I've done a 20,000 word thesis in the MBA. Will it be helpful in getting directly enrolled into a PhD? Possibly. We need to review what that 20,000 word thesis was in the MBA. And Pfizer, my team is always willing to look at all of that and work out that you've got credit. We have to make sure that what you do in your MBA or what you've done in your thesis aligns directly with the MRes, because that is the entry criteria for anybody to undertake a PhD at Macquarie University. They need to have a Master's by research, and an MBA with a 20,000 word thesis could possibly achieve those goals. But this is a case-by-case basis. So what I suggest you do is you contact the research office at the Macquarie Business School, and they'll be able to answer your questions once you provide a little bit more documentation. Ash is asking a question around IP. IP is always an interesting question at universities. Um, Macquarie University has a principle that essentially the university owns the IP, but there are sharing arrangements that can be put in place, and the student also can be an owner in that IP. But with many IP arrangements, we need to understand first what is the background IP, what is the new IP to be developed, and who is responsible for the development of that. We have an innovation and commercialization unit at the university, and they can assist in that endeavour. Thomas asks an interesting question, which is around the student experience of an MRes by research versus a master's by coursework. And I really think the MRes is a different degree because it's a research degree. Coursework degrees are, very linear in their sense of, there's assessment scheduled, there's the answer to those questions are typically known. Whereas with research, the answers are unknown, or we're trying to find better answers. So the experience I find for students undertaking research is one where they have to persevere, because you have to think. You're going to be challenged, but that's what a PhD and an MRes allows you to develop and cultivate. A mind of critical thought, of critical thinking, so you can find innovative ways to address problems and try and address the unknown. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for many students in the cohort as they move from, be it a bachelor's degree to a master's, or a master's degree to a research degree. It's that unknown that can be sometimes challenging, but it's very rewarding at the end because you're doing something you're interested in. You get to take control of the questions you want to ask and try and answer. Lisa, to work out what units or we can give you credit for, what we need is for you to essentially submit an application. And when you submit that application, you would be providing your transcripts and your CV. So that way we can address and work out what RPL could be provided. But if you contact Lynn Bai at the research office, or if you speak to one of the HDR directors that are in the discipline you elect, so for example, if that's in finance, we've got John Lay, who's the HDR director for finance. He'd be able to assist with that sort of a question. Okay, so Tanya, yes, there are time limits to complete a PhD and to complete your MRes thesis. So your MRes thesis, the second year, essentially it's 9 months, 9 to 10 months. You start in January and you're supposed to submit it at the end of October. We have a mid-year intake as well, but essentially if you don't meet that 9 months, what happens? Well, there are extensions available. Extensions are available if, unforeseen events. The PhD is a 3-year PhD. Again, there are extensions are available. You can actually extend your PhD by up to 1 year. Sarah, can you undertake a MRes part-time? Absolutely. We have an MRes program that's available with mid-year intakes for you to stretch it out and undertake it part-time. Tanya, you're asking a question on the word limit for the MRes thesis. It's 20,000 words, which is what we suggest. I wouldn't suggest you write more than that, but you can always go a little bit over it. But 20,000 is the word limit that we set. And for a PhD, Tanya, the recommendation is anywhere from, I think it's 60 to 80,000 words. But, it really does depend on discipline. Some disciplines have a very short thesis. Others are on the lengthier side. But the university puts out a recommendation of around 60 to 80,000. Lisa's asking, does the second year mean just the thesis? In the second year, there is not just only the thesis component, which is you writing the 20,000 word thesis. There is also an additional unit, which is research frontiers. And essentially that involves you being kept up to date, or being up to date on the latest research in your area. So that involves going to seminars, and it's an extension of RF1. There is assessment with that, which is actually worth 10% of your overall grade. Your thesis is worth 90%. And that 10% is broken up into a presentation, which is done via the HDR Expo at Macquarie Business School. We typically run that in July, early August. And then there's also 5% of your assessment is from a written report, which might be a critical review of a piece of research. Aliki Misran asks, you're an econ and science, and you're wondering if there are research assistant opportunities. Yes, there are. There's not a general broadcast way of trying to identify this. What I would suggest you do is you would contact either the HDR director or the research director of a discipline to see if there are research assistant opportunities available. There is also a program run at Macquarie University where you can undertake internships or research assistant internships to work out whether you want to undertake research. And there's actually even a scholarship provided for that program with Macquarie. So are there any other questions, thoughts people have that need to be addressed? Okay, oh, sorry, we've got a couple more questions. So Pfizer asks, I've done a BBA and an MBA from Pakistan. Can I directly get enrolled into the second year of the MRes or PhD? Also, do I need to get my degrees verified? So you've answered your own question. We actually do need to verify all your degrees, make sure that there is a research component. And if you have the research component and the research training, and we have a suitable supervisor, yes, we can work on your entry into a PhD. If you haven't done a thesis, but you've done some research training, and you have a topic of interest for a supervisor, direct entry into the second year may be possible. SR is asking, if I enter into the second year, do I still get the stipend for international students? Yep. The entry into the second year, direct entry into the second year of the MRes does not exclude you from being able to participate in the scholarship round to see if you are awarded a scholarship. All scholarships at Macquarie University are competitive. So the second year, rather than just going on your GPA, we'll have to assess it with other international students. We've done this many, many times. Harsh asks, when is the last date for applications? Actually, the last date for applications is the 15th of September for a session 1 start in 2021. Pfizer asks, is there a childcare facility available in the management school? The university has a childcare facility, but I'm not the best person to answer that. I suggest you'd contact the childcare that is run by Macquarie University, and they may be able to address your concerns. So Anad asks, to what extent is grade in the master, does the master's matters to get enrolled in the MRes program? I have a joint journal publication in a high impact journal. So Anad, you probably have to share a little bit more information. Look, getting entry into the program, there is a GPA requirement, but we do take into consideration other elements to demonstrate that this is a candidate that has achieved high performance, and we predict or we anticipate that that will continue. What I suggest you do is possibly reach out to a supervisor that is in the field of interest, because that way that will also assist in your cause to try and to get somebody to assist you to say this is somebody that should be in the program. Last question is, I have a Master's of Accounting. Can I study in PhD accounting level just by research? How long time is it possible? If I understand correctly the question, a Master's of Accounting doesn't necessarily directly lead to a PhD entry. We need to assess whether you have done the research training units. You have to do the research training units, and you have to also undertake the thesis writing or equivalent. If we don't have those examples, I suggest you undertake the MRes from year 1. So Pfizer is asking for session 2 starts. The session 2 start is really only available if you want to if you're direct entry into the second year of the MRes. While we do allow part-time, we don't run every unit every session. So the 15th of September is the date that applications close if you want to start your MRes, i.e. that's in the first year. If you want to be in the second year, we do have a deadline or application deadline for that date as well. Okay, well, it looks like we have no more questions left to answer. So without further ado, I guess we'll bring this session to a close. I want to thank everybody for listening and joining us today to hear a little bit about the Masters by Research and the Business School program. Like I said, the Business School has higher admission rates, higher admission criteria in terms of GPA. And I do suggest you reach out to potential supervisors to work out the best research plan for you. We've had a lot of questions which are around, you know, I already have a master's degree, can I get credit? Yes, we're not going to be able to answer those questions in this sort of a forum. What I suggest you do is you contact the research office, you provide your transcripts and what you think is of equivalence to the MRes, and then we apply. We have to go through this process to authenticate the veracity of the claims that you want to make, and then we check that. All right, well, I think I'll bring this session to a close. So thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing applications for a session 1 start in 2021. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.